morning dish.
He's the hardest working man in show business. His band's music takes you into the midnight hours. And when you wake up, his voice is back on your radio alarm clock. How on earth did this happen?
Well, Jeff saw me taking out the trash at the radio station.
And he won another award.
But this one is better.
I'm your boogeyman. That's what I am.
It's the Morning Dish with the 2019 Radio Personality of the Year winner, Stephen Phillips.
You paying attention to this, Packy?
And Murphy's own Sherry Raines.
Yeah, you must have given horseback passes to the right guy, Stephen.
Well, giddy up.
And Packy Smith's Shetland pony is right alongside.
You guys know these demo tapes don't just edit themselves together, right?
Well, all right.
3 cheers for Stephen Phillips.
Y'all need to help Stephen Phillips out over there. Out the door and off the radio.
Here's Stephen Phillips.
All right, folks, we're back in here sideways, and we have got a young man on that has actually wrote a book about Col Bruce Hampton, the world-famous Col Bruce Hampton. Jerry Grillo, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Man, we're glad to have you, man. I hate you get up so early and have to travel so far because you just live over the mountain. That's kind of cool.
Well, I was going to say something about that, but you're right. Up here in the mountains, I guess we tend to get up a little early. We don't want to waste the day.
I'm with you on that. Man, I come in here this morning talking about you being on the radio talking about Col Bruce Hampton. Packy actually was at an event that Colonel was playing at, and then Sherry said that Colonel was in a couple of movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know
yes,
he was in Sling Blade. I know for sure. I remember that clearly.
Yep. Oh, that was such a great scene, wasn't it?
Right, where he was the wordsmith. He was part of Dwight Yoakam's band.
Yes.
Good.
Where he waxes poetic about baking the cookies of our discontent.
Yes.
Well, now tell us, you got to know Col Bruce Hampton. You got to know him personally over the years and actually wrote this book. Tell us, I mean, we want to know details, man. What's going on with this?
All the gory details.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, you know what? It's interesting. Bruce, of course, was big time in Atlanta going back to the late 60s. And I'd always, of course, I'd heard of him. I spent most of my life in Georgia and the Atlanta area way back in the day. And I'd always heard of him and probably was a little scared of him because of the stories I'd hear. You know, he could guess birthdays. He could, the legends were he could read your mind and all this kind of stuff. And he was a character. He could guess your birthdays, and I don't know about reading minds and such, but he was an incredible, multi-talented artist who could, do comedy as well as he could, lead a band. And I just happened to meet him, about 15 years ago up here in Sauti-Nakuchi, where I live, just over the hill from you.
Right.
He was playing a festival here in my community, and I got to know him and just really dug him. And our friendship kind of took off from there. I was a journalist, have been a journalist most of my life, and at some point, I guess I just asked him, "Hey, man, has anybody ever written a book about you?" And and then it all went downhill from there.
Well, you're right, he's a fascinating character, and I don't think people realize how connected he was in the music industry. I mean, on his final performance, which was tragic, there were a lot of big names there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
there really were.
Now, who are some of the people that actually come off of him? I mean, actually that went through his band that actually famous musicians.
Sure. Well, some of the artists who count Bruce as a mentor in some way, and these are people who both played in his band or maybe they jammed with him at different times.
Right.
Derek Trucks, let's start with him. One of the best-known guitar players in the world. And when he was a little kid, 10, 11, 12, he would take the stage with Bruce. Bruce sort of would give him a spotlight and, sort of helped him, taught him a little bit about the music business, but really more about being an artist, I think. So Derek Trucks, Jimmy Herring, who's with Widespread Panic now, O'Teal Burbridge, who's playing with the Dead and Company, but played with the Allman Brothers for many, many years. Just a bunch of folks who have, Bruce had a great line, I guess, and it had something to do with, I guess you call it his legacy.
Right.
Because people were trying to ask him, well, what is it? What is your legacy? And basically, he said, I think for 50 years I've kept a lot of the mentally ill employed.
That's about the truth. I'm with him on that.
And And so he was always very proud of, and I think of creating work situations for musicians. And Stephen, as you know, that could be a tough gig to land sometimes.
Oh man, you ain't just kidding. I hate musicians. I really do. I'll just be honest with you. Yeah. But this guy, you know, I mean, Colonel Bruce, he was a neat dude. I mean,
he really was. And I'm looking at the where you can purchase the book a number of places. I'm going to buy this book because I love the title, The Music and Mythocracy of Col Bruce Hampton, a basically true biography.
Basically, this is basically true. But now this thing was actually put out by Georgia Tech. Is that right?
Actually, University of Georgia Press put it out, and the connection there is pretty cool because Colonel Bruce's grandfather, who was an actual colonel in the Army, was first a major college football coach, believe it or not. He coached the University of Georgia pre-Bulldogs, like before they were even called the Bulldogs, from like 1910 to 1919. Bruce's grandfather was their head football coach. He's the one who actually started Georgia's winning tradition. I mean, they beat the tar out of Georgia Tech most times, which, as you know, Georgia fans really love.
Yeah.
And so that was just a great place to get it published. I reached out to them, and I thought, boy, talk about Colonel Bruce type of synchronicity. This is it.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, this looks like a fascinating book. Now, where can they go pick this book up, Jerry?
Sure, great question. You could get it pretty much any online bookseller that you can think of. I mean, I've been telling people you could go right to the source, which is ugapress.org, but, you know, you can get it on bookshops.org to help support your local independent booksellers. But then you can also go to the big giant behemoths that we all know of, like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all them have it. Right. And it's I'm very proud of it. I think the response has been nice from a lot of musicians who played with Bruce. They've been happy with it, and that's made me happy.
Oh, I mean, no doubt. You know, it's a sad thing, though. You know, he passed away on stage, and that's kind of what everybody remembers.
On stage.
Yeah.
You're right, and I buried the lead, but thank you for bringing that up. It's, I think the thing that Bruce might, in some ways, unfortunately, in some ways, be remembered most for how he passed away, and that was he collapsed on stage at his 70th birthday concert in the Fox. 4,600 people, you know, absolutely reaching the apex of joy with a 4-hour concert, and then diving into the pits of hell when he collapsed. It was just that kind of emotional night. Well, he collapsed at the end of the show.
And when they didn't even really realize, though, right? People didn't realize he'd actually had had.
They thought he was joking. They thought this was one of Colonel Bruce's routines, because he was known to sort of imitate James Brown and some of the soul singers, like, you know, passing out on stage, and he was just a real showman. And so a lot of people at first were laughing, oh, there's Bruce paying homage to the young guitar player and then passing out on stage, except when he didn't get up for several minutes, you know, that's when they ended the show, and it was surreal, to say the least. But you know, I can't think, this is easy for me to say, but I can't think of a better way to make an exit if I was a performing artist, you know, doing what I love. And, you know, hell, I'm a writer, so I guess if I just sort of collapsed while typing something, maybe that'd be the way to go.
Yeah. But, you know, something else that, you know, pretty neat about this book, you know, we've had Chuck Leavell on here. He's actually involved in this. Yes,
he is. He's Chuck Leavell was kind enough to write the foreword to this book. Chuck knew Bruce for over 50 years. I mean, their friendship went back to the late 60s, early Capricorn days, and like everybody else, Bruce guessed Chuck's birthday the first time they met, and Chuck was both freaked out and hooked ever since. They became good friends. Chuck played with Bruce a few times over the years. You know, he always had his own things, of course. Right. That's a Rolling Stone we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but Chuck always counted one of his favorite all-time gigs was a live performance at the Georgia Theater with Bruce's best band, in my opinion, the Aquarium Rescue Unit.
Right.
And that was when they recorded their first album. And they brought Chuck in to play, and he had no preparation. He just went right in and killed it.
You know, one thing that's about Chuck Leavell that I think is really cool, I don't think Chuck realizes how big of an influence he has been on music over the years and how big of a star he actually is. He just seems like he is just so down to earth to me.
He is. You're right. It's funny you say that, Stephen. I was talking about that with somebody the other day because he is so just down to earth, regular person, hardworking guy. I don't think he doesn't put a whole lot of stock in his own immortality.
I mean, honestly, and when we had him on, everybody's like, he is like the piano god, he's been involved in so much stuff. And then that's just like Colonel Bruce Hampton. I don't think he really realized what influence he had over the years.
No, I don't think he did. Bruce was, it's funny, a lot of people I talked to over the years I worked on this, and just, in recognizing, people wondered, how come he isn't bigger than he is? How come he's rich and famous or whatever, some people are going for there. And he never really was. I mean, he was successful in that he always had gigs and he did a lot of the management himself of the bands. But in some ways, he was against that. He didn't like the idea, I think, of being a household name or being famous. And sometimes he may even did some things to sort of sabotage his own career. Right. I don't mean in an ugly way, but just sort of, okay, it's time for me to leave the band now. He built the band, and now we're getting too big, and I better leave it. It's just, he just seemed, his most famous song was basically Frightened. And so Bruce was basically frightened about a lot of strange and unusual things. And I think he was basically a shy person who found a way to get to share his art through performance. And I think we've all known performers who are shy,
right?
But it all comes out on stage. And Bruce was, I believe, he was one of those types of guys.
Well, that's the thing about it. And just like him, I mean, he played music because he loved playing music. We talked to Tom Emanuel yesterday, and he plays music because he loves to play music. Some of the folks, I feel like nowadays people are getting into music for the money. That's kind of what they're looking at. The money that can be made.
I mean, you just never know, I guess. Mm-hmm. And who knows what motivates a person or an artist? But with Bruce, it definitely was the art, and it was, like you said, the love of making music or of deconstructing music. He loved everything about music, and that was, both the making of it and the destroying of it.
Right. There you go. Man, we have got to get to break. Tell them again where they can get that book.
They could get the book at ugapress.org or any online bookseller.
There you go. We're going to keep promoting this thing, and I'll be hollering at you here in a day or two, and we got some more stuff we need to be working on.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yep, very much.
Thank you all very much.
Yep, you have a good day, brother. Thank you for listening. This is Stephen Phillips, host of The Morning Dish. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a lot more interviews out there to listen to. Plus, you can listen online every morning at WJULradio.com or Lake 97.7 WJUL. And give us a like on our Facebook page, The Morning Dish.